If you had to select a 24-hour period as the most important in your life, what would it be? Think about that for a moment, right? You might pick the day you were born, even though none of us remember that day. Others might pick their wedding day or the day they got engaged. You might choose the day your child was born or the day your first grandchild was born. Maybe the day you finally graduated from college, when you finally maybe broke your addiction and found freedom. The day you paid off the last credit card. Hallelujah. That's right. The day you landed your dream job, the day you were pronounced maybe cancer-free, the day you committed your life to Jesus. Your pick might be a good day or a horrible day. But regardless, you selected 24 hours that impacted the rest of your life. See, when it comes to the most important 24 hours in the life of Jesus, there's no doubt. For the next 5 weeks, we are going to look at the most important 24 hours in history. 24 hours that are the foundation of our faith. 24 hours that led to your salvation. 24 hours that changed the world. 24 hours that contain powerful, life-changing lessons. If your goal is to be a lifelong follower of Jesus who really knows Him, you've got to slow down, take some time, and learn from these pivotal moments in Jesus' life. These 24 hours led to the cross, the tomb, and ultimately His resurrection. It would take 24 hours of teaching, 48 weeks really, to completely deal with every detail and every teaching of Jesus in these key 24 hours. Of course, we're not going to do that. Instead, I'm going to focus on the most pivotal moments and words in these series. It all started with an event we call the Last Supper. It was Jesus' final night with the disciples before His arrest and crucifixion. An emotion-packed, tension-filled evening that started with a lesson that goes against everything culture and society teaches. See, we live and work in a competitive society. I didn't know if you realized that yet. We admire people who are rich, famous, and powerful. There is enormous pressure to climb the ladder of success. If you Google the word personal power, you get over 4 billion results. 5 steps to personal power, how to boost your personal power, create personal power, channel your personal power, develop your personal power. It's all about being bigger, stronger, and higher than the people around you. Sadly, that way of thinking even carries over into the church. Some people come to church looking for power, something to run or control, or someone to boss around. They want a title or they want a position because everyone knows that's the way to power and influence, is a title and a position. Have you ever heard stories like this? Let me share this. On her first week, she was thankful to be back in church after many years away. Her second week, she noticed things we were doing wrong and told us what we needed to fix. Her fourth week, she wanted to be in charge of a ministry. Her sixth week, she wanted to teach a class. Her eighth week, we were clueless and needed her help to make things right. By her 20th week, she was gone in search of someone or something else she could control. I don't know if you ever heard of stories like that or been in moments like that. We seem to be on an endless quest for the spotlight. We want recognition. We want honor. We want people to follow our leading and listen to our thoughts and my ideas. We want other people to ask us for advice. We want to be special and treated that way. Why? Because we are somebody. We matter and I'm important. I know. You would never say that out loud. Nobody ever would. But you may think it. We may think it. That thinking affects what you do, what you say, and how you treat others. Sacrifice for missions? Forget it, Pastor. I've got more important things to spend my money on. Teach kids, work in the nursery. Don't they know who I am? That's below me. We want the title. We want the power, the spotlight, and the recognition. That's not new. That's nothing new. See, people have thought that way for generations. Even Jesus' closest followers struggled with that. So, Jesus did and said something to turn that way of thinking completely upside down. All four Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, tell the story of the Last Supper. I've chosen to primarily use the account from the book of John, beginning in chapter 13. Before we start with the passage, let me set the stage for you. You've probably seen the famous painting by Da Vinci titled The Last Supper. While a classic work of art, it's not really historically accurate. From studying the culture and habits of the time, we know Jesus and his disciples wouldn't have been sitting in chairs at a long, straight table like the head table at a banquet. Instead, it looked more like this. It was a U-shaped table built low to the floor. You sat on pillows or cushions and rested as you ate. It wasn't like a business meeting or a banquet. It was like a family meal, a close, intimate gathering among trusted friends. They were all looking at each other, sharing food and talking as they ate. And we pick it up in John 13, verse 1. It says, "It was just before the Passover feast. Jesus knew that the time had come for him to leave this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he now showed them the full extent of his love. The evening meal was being served, and the devil had already prompted Judas Iscariot, son of Simon, to betray Jesus, which Jesus knew. He knew what was in Judas's heart and what was coming next. And we read in verse 3, Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power and that he had come from God and was returning to God. All things under his power. It was the ultimate strength position. Jesus had all power in heaven and earth. He was over everyone and everything. You expect someone in that kind of power position to make demands, leading, ruling, and being served. Instead, Jesus did something totally unexpected, and we read in verse 4. It says, he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel around his waist. Jesus took off his robe. He wrapped a towel around his waist like a servant. The disciples weren't silent. No one knew what he was going to do or what was going to happen next. And it says in verse 5, it says, after that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. You can understand, in those days, roads weren't asphalt or concrete. They were dust, dirt, and mud. Men wore sandals. After walking through town, their feet were dirty, dusty, and smelly. It was the job of a low-level servant to wash feet of everyone who came in the house. In this instant, for some reason, no one washed their feet. None of the disciples took the initiative to wash anybody's feet. After all, they were important. Just as taking off your shoes before entering a home is expected. In many cultures, washing feet was an important ritual during this time. It was an act of hospitality, hygiene, and a religious ritual of cleansing. At the same time, it was completely demeaning. It was only done by slaves. They would have a bowl, a towel, and a water in that bowl. And they'd begin to wash their feet. But see, Jesus on his own assumed the role of a servant. He put a towel around his waist, poured water into a big bowl, and began to walk around the table, carefully and gently, washing each of his disciples' feet. The greatest of all, listen to this, the greatest of all became the servant of all. The greatest man to ever walk the face of this earth had all the power he needed to do whatever he wanted, became the servant of all. Peter tried to stop Jesus, but Jesus insisted. See, Jesus, the Son of God, the Savior of the world, humbled himself, took on the role of a servant, bowed before them, and washed their feet. Can you imagine the moment? I don't like feet. I don't know about y'all. I don't like feet. I don't want to touch your feet, smell your feet, or see your feet. But Jesus, soon to be crucified on a cross for the sins of all mankind, knelt at the feet of simple, ordinary men and washed their feet. The Son of God was acting like a servant. The foot washing at the Last Supper was an intimate moment, an act of love and service. The disciples would never forget the moment when Jesus knelt before them and washed their feet. I have to think that there were tears around the table as slowly and quietly Jesus washed their feet. Jesus humbled himself as a servant and washed the feet of his followers. Why did he do it? Jesus wanted them and us to know, if you want to serve me, you have to be willing to first serve others. The pathway to leadership is selfless service. In verse 12 it says, when he had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. Do you understand what I have done for you? He asked them. You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. What? We're supposed to wash each other's feet? How, Jesus, how often should we wash each other's feet? Where? How do we find that many bowls and towels? Like, what do we do? And Jesus explained further. It was an example or a demonstration. He says in verse 15, he says, I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. I tell you the truth, no servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them. We all want to be blessed. We all want to be blessed. But what is the modern day equivalent of foot washing? It's others first, me last. I want you to hear me this morning. If you get nothing out of this message, you need to hear this, because this is who First NEA is and will be and always will be. Others first, me last. Serving others instead of expecting to be served yourself. I think of many that are serving here in ministry right now that have been through our Next Steps class that connects you to a ministry and gets you on Team NEA. I think of the Forthman brothers, Elijah and Isaiah, that selflessly serve in our kids' ministry. I think of Troy Dale, old TD, we call him TD. He comes early with his parents and helps with anything that is needed for that before a Sunday morning service. Usually he'll grab the vacuum cleaner because he knows after we do our little prayer circle. He understands that before people start walking in, I like the little mat to be nice and clean because it's already gotten dirty from all of us walking in. And so he's already caught on. He's a smart kid. He's already kind of caught on. So he goes and he grabs the vacuum cleaner. He'll vacuum or he'll pick up little things. But he's always here serving on a Sunday morning. But see, you don't ever see that. The prayer group that gets here around 9:15 every Sunday and prays for our service. We're always looking for more to join that group. We can never have enough. We'd love all y'all to show up at 9:15. We have one big prayer service before church service. Hey, I think that'd probably set the tone for worship, wouldn't it? We can never have enough people in a ministry serving. Because like our mission statement says, love the one, serve the one, because every soul matters to God. There is always room for more that think others first, me last. Others first, me last. The path to leadership is selfless service. Taking on the attributes of Jesus and washing feet. See, foot washing is being so committed to others, you are willing to make yourself like a servant. You're like, well, now, Pastor Trey, you say it like that. I don't know if I'm a servant. Well, Jesus did. It's choosing to go last, even when you deserve to be first. I kind of, when I was reading through that over the last few weeks, I get this picture of when we're having like our potluck dinners, and everybody's like kind of standing back, and nobody's going first. Like, no, you go first. No, you go first. No, thank you. No, you go first. No, thank you. You know what? Pastor Trey just preached this message a few weeks ago. I don't need to go first. I'm going to go last. So why don't you go first? Oh, no, I don't want to go first. I could just see that, It's doing the job or ministry no one else is willing to do, and no one notices. It's the Elijahs and the Isaiahs and the Troy Dales and the others that get here and you don't ever see. It's not because you have to, it's because you choose to. It's honoring others regardless of whether you get something for it. It's talking good about others instead of trying to get others to talk good about you. It's giving up the spotlight and the recognition that comes with the position and instead shining the light on others. See, this isn't natural. What we're preaching and talking about this morning is not natural. We don't automatically do this. It's not our nature. Instead, it's a decision, a daily lifestyle decision. I'm not just going to put others first. I am going to intentionally put me last. I'm going to follow the command of Jesus, and I am going to lead by what? I'm going to lead by serving. What would a church look like if we all thought others first and me last? If we looked for opportunities to humble ourselves and serve others, the bathrooms would always be spotless. What if somebody said, Pastor Trey, I'll take that toilet brush. Don't you worry about it. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. No problem. Pastor Trey, give me those Clorox wipes. I'll take care of this. Absolutely. Can you imagine every time you went in, someone be wiping off the counter, picking up paper towels? Maybe that's what foot washing means. Maybe that's what it means. You would get here late and every parking place close to the building would be open, but you couldn't find a spot in the lower level parking area. Maybe that's the modern day equivalent of foot washing. We'd have a waiting list to work in our kids' areas and in the nursery. Everyone would want the high work, low visibility, no glory jobs. Maybe that's what foot washing means. What would worship ministry look like? I'd like to think if I was at the Last Supper, I would have jumped up, grabbed a towel, and started washing feet side by side with Jesus. The problem is that it would have been too late. It would have been too late. The disciples all had the chance to serve before Jesus did it. I often think, what would a youth ministry look like or a student ministry look like if it was others first and me last mentality? Students, what if you carried that over to your schools where your peers and teachers could see you walk that out? Yeah, you might get made fun of a little bit. But why don't you take that others first, me last mentality into your classrooms and humble yourself? How would you act if you really decided other people mattered more than yourself and made your goal serving others? For some of you, this might be the key. Today might be the key for you. You try so hard to prove that you matter, it's time to tell other people that they matter. You look for ways to be important, instead make other people feel important. You've tried to make sure everyone knows how good you are. How about maybe change your approach? Look for good in others. You want everyone to accept you and be your friend. You want to be popular. Instead, focus on accepting others. You've been on an endless search for self-worth and recognition. It's time to give someone else worth and recognition. It's time to wash their feet. You want a position of honor? Maybe like Jesus, you should honor someone else. Quit worrying about how you should be treated and start focusing on how you treat others. See, we get so worried about what we want, what we need, what we deserve. It's all about me, me, me. How about giving all of that up and being like Jesus with me? What would a church be like where everyone caught that? The Jesus model of leadership serving. And not just during the holidays or when we sign up to help, but as a lifestyle. What kind of impact would we make on the community? Can you imagine the message that would send to people who didn't have a relationship with Jesus? Everyone would talk about the church whose focus was serving and loving others. Then in verse 34 and 35, Jesus drove home the point with this powerful command. I want to read it. It says, John 13:34, a new command I give you, love one another as I have loved you. So you must love one another. Jesus didn't say, hey, I have a request, guys. He didn't say that. He said, I'm going to request this, or I'd like to suggest a new way to treat each other. It was a command. It was a command. If you want to be a lifelong follower of Jesus, you must do this. But Pastor Trey, they haven't been nice to me for a long time. They're so mean to me. They're saying mean things about me and to me. Jesus really couldn't have meant that, right? Let's look again. Let's look at what Jesus said. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. How did Jesus love you? He left the glory of heaven and came to earth. He set aside lordship and became a servant. The disciples didn't know it, but Jesus was about to die for them and for us. Jesus set the example of humility and sacrifice. He loved people who loved him, and he loved people who were cruel to him. That's how we are supposed to love. Why does that matter so much? Look what Jesus said next in verse 35. It says this, by this everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. I want you to hear me this morning. That's a strong statement. It's a very, very strong statement. Sometimes we just read over things and we hear things and we're like, oh, that was so eloquent. I'm telling you, this is a very strong statement. Our love for each other is the evidence we are followers of Jesus. I want to take a moment. I want to explain something. This verse and the one that we're about to read is why we are so tough on gossip and dysfunctional conflict resolution. Because there's a lot riding on it. When you don't evidence love for others, when we gossip and gripe and complain about other followers of Jesus Christ, you completely invalidate your testimony. I know this is not popular. I'm not expecting a lot of amens this morning, but I wanted to touch your heart this morning and change your life. People watching are no longer able to recognize you as Jesus' disciple. Instead, you are just like them. The picture is what you say about others when you're at work will either convince people you follow Jesus or prove that you don't. What you say about the church and me and whoever else, what you say about the worship team or what you say about others demonstrates one way or the other whether you are following Jesus or not. When you angrily vent your opinions about church or leaders, and I'm talking about any church, not just this one. You harm your testimony. I enjoy diversity of styles and opinions, and as long as they are wrapped in love, let's have healthy conversations. I don't want anyone to discredit the cause of Christ because they can't control their emotions and refuse to obey Jesus' commands. And you might be sitting here this morning and say, well, Pastor Trey, I don't believe that. Well, then this morning I would challenge you that you're calling Jesus a liar and deciding you know better than God himself. Because I'm telling you, people are watching us. When we say we are saved and we love Jesus and we are following Jesus, I'm not saying you got to be perfect. You can't mess up. That is not what I'm saying this morning. But your testimony is that powerful. It's tough, I understand. But we've tolerated people disobeying Jesus in the name of Jesus for far too long. If the way people know we are his disciples is our love for each other, then lack of love for each other proves you are not his disciples. So we've got to quit claiming to be, if that's the problem. If you find yourself splitting hairs about what it means to love one another, maybe ask yourself this. Do you say things like, I know I have to love them, but that doesn't mean I have to like them? You're probably not being very loving. We have to look to Jesus, our model. And he laid down his life. He laid down his life to demonstrate his love. And I'm coming to a close. The primary teaching of Jesus at the Last Supper was opt out of the race for power, for status, and position, and instead serve and love each other. If we would get those two things right, it would be absolutely unbelievable the impact we would have in our community. It wouldn't matter if our building was beautiful, if we had this, if we didn't have the latest technology, a perfect cup of coffee, the best music, the most comfortable seats, the most convenient parking, and the best preaching in town. And none of that would matter. If we serve and love each other and serve others, we wouldn't have enough services to fit the people. Why? Because that's countercultural and unexpected. See, in a me first world, an others first church stands out. I'm going to say that again. In a me first world, an others first church stands out. As our worship team comes back, I struggled with how to end this message. I really wanted to watch you guys wash each other's feet. In fact, I was going to start with you, Lindsay. How did you know that? I should have just kept the baptismal filled up, and we could have just did it right now. I didn't even think about it. I thought about having bowls of water and old-fashioned foot washing. I tell you, I've only ever been a part of one. It's very, very humbling. When we were students in youth group back when we were 15 or 16, our youth pastor busted it out. It was for a 15-year-old, it was pretty awkward. But you want to know why it was awkward? Because it was humbling. You know how you are when you're 15, 16. You got pride. You think you know everything, and you got everything together. And here you are, this grown adult is washing your feet, and you're like, oh, no. But it was humbling. That's why it was awkward. I had never been humbled before. But this is not to do something once and feel better about yourself. This is not that kind of message. I don't want it to be. This is supposed to be our lifestyle and our testimony to a watching world. We got to live this out at school, your workplace, in the community, and at home, and as well here at church. Serve others here. Look for ways to serve others in every arena of life. Humble yourself and serve. God will honor that as you follow the example of Jesus. Love each other. Love other followers of Jesus, even if they're not exactly like you or think like you or act like you. Look past the age, race. Look past the style of dress. Look past your differences and love with all you've got. When you do, people will recognize you as a follower of Jesus. And you know what will happen? Is your light will shine. Serve and love. God will use that in remarkable ways to build his kingdom. And can I tell you, First NEA, we're on the right track. You have grabbed the mission and grabbed hold of the vision of love the one, serve the one. Every soul matters to God. But now it's time to do it everywhere we go and not just wait for people to walk in our church to do it. It's time for us to do it outside of the walls. When we go eat at restaurants, when the server drops a drink, say, hey, give me a towel, let me get that for you. And when they say, no, say, no, let me help you. I see that you're struggling a little bit this morning. Maybe you're stressed. Let me help you out this morning. Or when you go somewhere to your workplace and you see that somebody is struggling in the moment at work, say, hey, what can I do to help you? Even though you might be really busy and it might put you a little behind, what can I do to help you? See, it's time for us to take it outside of the walls of the church. And so let's continue to build on what God is doing here at First NEA. You've grabbed the vision, and we're running with it wholeheartedly in unity, but it's good to be reminded of it needs to be always, no matter where we go, church, school, work, wherever it is, others first, me last.